Well, hi folks, meteorologist Michael Wilhite here, WilhiteWx.com. It is time for my final winter forecast. I did not do a preliminary forecast video this year. I did release a preliminary forecast. That's available on my website there, WilhiteWx.com. There have been a lot of changes since then, though. I went very conservative with the extent of the cold and things. A lot of the data has gotten much colder in the trend since then. I've done a lot more diving into the analogs and such, and so I'm going to sort of show you some of those things tonight. But overall, it looks like a pretty cold winter is going to be on the way for much of the U.S. I want to do things a little differently this year. First, I want to get right straight to the forecast, and then after we look at the forecast, I'll dig into the analysis after that. So for those of you that are just wanting the forecast highlights itself, I'll get you that up front here. And then for those of you that want to dig in more into the science of why I've put together what I have, well, stick around and watch the whole video, and I'll dive in depth into this. So here are your temperature forecasts for what I think is going to be a pretty big winter for most of the United States. I expect a pretty consistent western ridge and eastern trough to set up. We do have an El Nino coming, but it's not a regular El Nino. Stick around for the analysis, and I'll talk about how that's going to affect some things. But in general, most of the eastern portions of the country here are going to be overall below normal, and then just some well below normal temperature anomalies here over a good chunk of the upper Midwest, extending down into the Ohio Valley, into the Tennessee Valley there. As well, your above normal will stay likely out to your west there. Everything more just not in an area here, more of average normal or to slightly one side or the other here, depending on how close you're lying, if you will, there. Now, as far as then precipitation, I did not make a regular old precipitation rainfall graphic, but I made a snowfall and ice combined graphic. And so this is where I think the active storm track is going to set up. And so I think a good chunk of the Great Lakes back out into here, into the southern plains, even in portions of the Tennessee Valley and Mississippi valleys here, lower Ohio Valley here, going on into the interior northeast, looks like you could have a pretty good snowfall year. Now, this is snowfall and ice, so whenever you see this, for example, this well above normal swath that goes through right through the lower Ohio Valley, in portions of the Tennessee Valley here, and then up into the northeast as well. Doesn't mean that's going to be all snow in that. I do think there will be some icing events, as there always are, and El Ninos tend to bring that. But wintry precip in general looks to be sort of well above normal in there. If we dial it down, I forecast specifically for southern Indiana and the lower Ohio Valley. So here are some highlights for you and some average snowfalls for some of the bigger cities here around southern Indiana, so that you can kind of get an idea on that. Forecast temperatures well below normal here in southern Indiana, about -3 degrees below normal. You say, well, 3 degrees below normal, that's not too bad. But that's averaged out over the period of December, January, and February. Remember the ridiculous cold that we saw back in 2013 and 2014 in those winters? Well, those were 3 and 5 degrees below normal around there. So again, we're looking at a pretty harsh winter there for the way things are forecast right now. As far as rainfall, near to slightly above normal. The big story here is going to be well above normal snowfall. And I would include ice in this around the area, just wintry precip in general, about 125 to 150% or more of normal across the area. Looks like we're going to have a very active storm track over us. So again, well below normal temperatures here in the light blue, below normal here in the blue, and then you have to get out west before you get to those normals. Active storm track here through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys up into the northeast, and it looks like it's going to be just an active winter overall here for us. Not snowing every single day, obviously, but certainly a fair amount of chances for some snow and ice kind of events for us this year. Well, that's the forecast. Let's get into the analysis here. So the first thing I want to do is sort of take you here into the oceans, and we need to talk about temperatures. We need to talk about El Nino, and we've got some other things that we need to sort of talk about here as well. You'll notice right down here temperatures along the equator, if you will. Let me pull up something here that I put out here on Twitter a while back, and this will just kind of help you to see a little bit of the areas that I am looking at here. So basically what we're looking at here is the El Nino. This is boxes 1 and 2 down here. This was from mid-October, and I'll show you the update here in just a second. But here in mid-October, what you had were these warmer waters out here more into the central. You had a lot of cooling. This would be favoring more what we call a El Nino Modoki. And a Modoki or a Modokai, whatever you want to call it. I've heard both in the videos. I'm not Japanese, so I don't know how to pronounce it. It is a Japanese word. But a Modoki Nino is where you have warmer temperatures out here more towards the Central Pacific than what you do off of the coast of South America. And when you have that, that tends to favor a much different temperature regime for the United States. It's a game changer. It makes it much more of a colder signal for the eastern half of the United States. You notice in box 3, we've got the blob back, the old warm blob that we talked about. This is warmer than normal waters underneath of the North Pacific Ocean here, around the Gulf of Alaska here. That tends to help favor a western ridge and an eastern trough, again keeping us colder than normal. If you remember back to the winter of 2013-14 and 14-15, we had some very cold winters around here, and this warm blob was one of the large things and responsible for that. It's back. Another thing that we see here is area 4 down here. These cooler waters near Australia here. That's what we would call a positive IOD, Indian Ocean Dipole. And basically, it can lead to predominantly cooler phases of the Madden-Julian oscillation for us. And so I won't get into the details of that, but the specific phases that are colder over the winter times, and that's what these cooler waters, this kind of an IOD, does for us. So it leads to cooler risks. So if we go back and we look at sort of where we are now here, let me just sort of turn my drawing pen here on so that we can highlight some things here for you. Let me get here into a green. Maybe that'll show up. That shows up pretty good. All right, so here's you got your very warm waters here in the Gulf of Alaska. And again, what that tends to do is you got your jet stream flowing out here. It tends to pop a ridge here in the west and then sort of a dive out here in the east, which would put us in much colder risks out there because of that. Not only do you have those warm waters here, but notice what you've got going on down in here, and this is your El Nino. And specifically, would you note with me that you have warmer anomalies down here, more into the Pacific, where you've got cooler anomalies going here. That's your Modoki El Nino going on. You've still got that. You still have your colder waters over here with your IOD, going to favor those colder phases of the MJO for us as well, the Madden-Julian oscillation. All of these things leading to what could be really just a heck of a winter for us around here. Notice the warm waters starting to build in here around Greenland here. This could be something that can help favor a negative NAO, which is a blocking signal. It sort of shuts the jet stream down over here and sort of leads to a roadblock, if you will. That helps to amplify the jet stream. And so right over here with this, what you have here, these warmer waters out here help to favor us for a negative EPO, East Pacific oscillation, a positive PNA. Sometimes it helps to favor here what we would call a negative Arctic oscillation here as well. All of those, if you are familiar with the terms, help to form a jet stream that looks sort of more like this. And so that just sort of helps to take cold air just sort of to dive down into the eastern side of the country. Now, I'll talk about what this means here for us visually here in just a second. But if you look at the El Nino indices, here's where we are in region 3.4. Region 3.4 is a central region right out in here. Region 4, you got region 3. 3.4 is the combination of these two close to out in here. And what you can see is a significant amount of warming for there. Now, we warmed up pretty highly, and we're going back down again, but we're definitely in an El Nino phase out there. It's nothing official from the National Weather Service yet, but it'll be called. You have to be 3 months specifically in a row above 0.5 to be classified as an El Nino. We're not there yet, but we will get there as we head into the winter. But look at this for 1.2. 1.2 is much colder. In fact, you're near neutral now. You've had a little bit of warming here, but overall you've been much colder than what you have in the other. That's this region down here. 1.4. 1 plus 2 is this particular region around South America down here. And so that without being much colder, now you got that Modokai El Nino or Modoki El Nino for me. Let me show you this kind of visually here. This is looking at the jet stream pattern. We're looking at a 500 millibar chart, and we're looking at a current chart. I'm recording this on November the 6th, 2018 here. And notice that you've got this forecast here for next week. What you've got forecast to go on here is you got a big Aleutian low up here, and what this is doing is it's popping up this big western ridge, and now you've got this eastern trough that's sort of going on up in here. So your jet stream lure sort of looks something like this. Well, now you've got this big western ridge out here. As a result of that, then, you know, you've got cold air diving in from the Arctic and Canada all the way down into here. And so it's going to get very cold in this portion of the country down here. And let me change colors on here, and you can kind of sort of see that. There's your big ridge. And look at it sort of down here. Well, notice what you got going on here, the coldest air. You got cross-polar flow coming on here. You've got air coming like this and just spilling on down into the south. That's some early season cold air along with this. And as I put this forward in time, I want you to notice that this feature, while it does relax up just a little bit here, maybe as we get later into the month, watch what happens as you get into the long term. This is as far as the model is going out here again. Watch what it's trying to do. It's trying to pump that ridge back up. It's not quite there yet, but it's starting to be your amplification there again. And what that's going to show me, folks, is we're looking at this to be a recurring pattern here. If you look at October and November, oftentimes you can really, during October and November, you can get clues as to what the winter will be like by examining the upper atmosphere and seeing just sort of the recurring patterns. I believe that this pattern right here is going to be a recurring feature over the wintertime. And so even though we may be under an El Nino, and El Ninos oftentimes lead to warmer, the normal kind of winters, it's going to be a weak El Nino overall. It's going to be a central-based El Nino, so that helps to pop up this kind of pattern rather than a more warmer pattern for us. And plus, with that warm blob out in the Gulf of Alaska, I really think that you've got a winter to remember here in the cards. And I'm not trying to hype it up. This is just my honest analysis. If you looked at my preliminary winter forecast, you'd see that I went much more conservative on here. I've been a little bit more bullish, and I think the data shows that. Here's what the temperature anomalies look like that. With that cold shot next week, we're taking this in 5-day forecast chunks, and just look at this. You can see whenever you get the Barney collars here, you get Barney collars are not friendly when you see these purple collars towards you. These are very cold temperature anomalies. And what you see is that even though as you get later into the period, remember as this trough goes on, you know, you get the warmer height, the higher collars in here. The oranger collars means higher than normal heights. And so it relaxes maybe just a little bit, but you're starting to see that ridge pop up again. And look at this. Even with that, notice what you have is still cooler anomalies here. So yes, it doesn't stay brutally cold all the time, but overall the theme for November here appears that it's going to be pretty cool. And I think that's a theme that you're going to see as you go forward into here. We're even starting to see this on the surface map showing storms. And just to really quickly go through this is one that comes next week. This comes actually this Friday and Saturday, and you see the rain, and you see you've already got some snow for upper portions of the Midwest here. Watch as this goes down here, and the GFS is the dashed lines here are your upper level heights on this, and you've got a system. You've got a big trough dip down into here. So there's some very cold air with this. The main storm track suppressed well to our south and becomes more of a coastal storm, but it brings energy with this. And notice that it has snow showers breaking out here across portions of the Ohio Valley and upper Ohio Valley. And notice this, what you've got right here, this little circle with the dashes around here. That is a piece of the polar vortex sort of breaking off, a lobe of it, if you will, and being displaced further south. Some of the coldest air on the planet being forced further south into this. And so that's some very cold anomalies. And because you got a tight upper level low here, well, you've got snow showers possibly breaking out with this. We'll see whether that verifies or not. But again, the idea here is it's early in the season with this. And I think that's going to be a recurring pattern here as we go. And then as you get in, again, there's more of your relaxation of the extreme cold. You go back to a cool pattern, but not a ridiculously cold pattern. And you get more rain showers. Notice the storm track here right through the south and through the Ohio Valley on up. And you notice what this one does. This could be a pretty disruptive storm around Thanksgiving potentially. And this is one that has enough cold air digging down into the side of it that wants to bring some snow here for Turkey Day. It could be gobble, gobble, shovel, shovel, for someone in here. Nah, this is more than a couple of weeks out here. So that's in fantasy land at this point. All I want to show you, though, is that pattern here is a very active pattern, and I don't see that pattern relaxing up any. And by the way, that you can look at modeling sometimes and say, well, this just sort of seems like that's out in fantasy land, but there is support for it in our organic forecasting methods. Organic forecasting methods are some of those things that don't rely on just a model. And so we could look at the Bering Sea rule. Bering Sea rule says you take a look at what's going on in the Bering Sea, just north of the Aleutian Islands here in Alaska, and you understand that what's going on in the Bering Sea there is going to be a similar pattern to what's going to go on to the United States about 18 to 21 days later. That's the idea. And so if you stormhamster.com/BSR, you can get these maps if you really wanted there. The guys that have put this together do a really great service by putting these maps together. And what you can see, this is looking at the surface map. You can look at the 500 millibar maps as well. But what this is showing is right around the 22nd, which is Thanksgiving Day, you've got a really deep trough here in the eastern United States. There's your ridge, and there's your trough over us, and you got a pretty big storm pattern here somewhere into the eastern United States here. And so that is just looking at observations of what happened here and putting it forward in time. And so this is for November the 3rd, and that's saying, all right, let's add 20 days, something like that. And you get an idea of what's going to go on right around Thanksgiving, and take a look at that. Now, here's your surface chart from the same thing. Again, there's your upper chart. There's your surface chart. There's your big storm. Go watch where you got the storm here on the GFS. That's awful doggone close. Is it going to look exactly like this? No, but I think the GFS has the right idea, and you can see it in the organic forecasting methods. And so, again, even the recurring Rossby wave train, the RRWT, this is the idea that says that the Rossby wave is basically just a long wave in the jet stream. So if I go back up to here, let me just sort of show you. So you've got a wave sort of like this. That's a Rossby wave. And what it's saying here on the recurring Rossby wave train is this wave will eventually repeat itself every so many days. That's the theory behind this. And it actually verifies out pretty well. And so if we look at this, what this is showing is the recurring Rossby wave train and taking the jet stream and propagating it forward in time through the months. And you see, anytime you see a spike in this is your precipitation chances. And this is a precipitation chance in general. And identifying if there's a snow chance with it here, because of the cold air that might come in, is where the stars are. Well, it doesn't identify snow here for Louisville. This is the nearest point to southern Indiana that I could find here. And so just as an example here, they have several points on here throughout the Midwest. We'll use this one for the sake of doing it. And you notice there's some decent precipitation chances, and it's active. But as we go forward in time, look at December. You still say very active. You've got multiple fronts that are going to, multiple dips in the jet stream, troughs that will bring fronts with them. And you notice, look at the snow chances that this is predicting. Some pretty doggone good snow chances. There's a good one right around possibly Christmas Eve, or excuse me, not Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve there. Christmas Day, not really showing much in here, but notice here's Christmas Day right here. There is a precipitation chance there with it, a small signal coming through. So again, there's December. Now as we forward in time, here's January. Look at all the snow chances that you've got in January. Then look at all the snow chances you got in February. You can sort of go back to these if you want to take a look at it more. You can pause the video and go back. But the idea here is, folks, is that we have an active winter coming up. So looking at just the raw organic data here, I really honestly think that this pattern that we've got going on with this western ridge and this eastern trough is going to be a recurring pattern that we have throughout the wintertime. And that's largely my justification behind the winter forecast. Analog data tend to support this as well. So I identified some years that had similar ocean conditions. We're looking at ocean conditions. I'm looking at ocean conditions that had a similar ocean up here, similar patterns down here, and similar patterns down here. For the most part. And when you do that, I come up, you can see the years that I came up with there. Here's the temperature profile that it looks like, and it gives a pretty cold signal here, again, over a majority of the nation here. And the 500 millibar pattern shows that as well. So again, what you're showing here, if you don't know, here is a big Aleutian low. And so you've got a jet stream. The warmer collars are ridges. So you've got ridging up in here and you got troughing down in the east. And again, the analogs here that I've chosen is looking similar to the ocean conditions that we've got right now going into our wintertime here, supporting kind of that idea that you have a western U.S. ridge and an eastern U.S. trough here. And that would support a very cold look overall with that. If we sort of take a look then about how that might break down on a month-by-month basis here. Here's what the analog years look for November. Here in the Ohio Valley, it became more of a normal signal than anything, but you see there's certainly cooler risks and the warmer risks to the back. But look at December. December becomes cold. January becomes cold. February stays cold. You have to wait until you get into March and April before you start to see that chance starting to relax just a little bit. Now, for fun, let's see if any of the forecast models, the seasonal models, verify this. Let's go take a look at the JAMSTAC first. This has been one of the more reliable models throughout the time here. Here's what it had in its June run for December, January, and February meteorological winter, we would say. It supported this. It had this cold eastern United States. It had the general idea there. It was a little bit colder in its July run. You went into the August and September runs and they became more warm, but then you came back to the latest run in October, starting to trend back to this idea again. So we will see how that verifies. The JAMSTAC has been reasonably reliable over some of the years. Now, here's what the NMME, which is a multi-model ensemble kind of model, and what you have here is predicting a warmer winter overall here. But I want you to notice, you know, this right in here is not really a warm look. That's an average look right there, and this is just sort of a very not mixed. There's not a strong signal right in here as you look over into this. All right, so it's not predicting cold weather. But what you need to understand about this is a very warm bias model. Let me show you last year's. This is what it showed us for last year. Remember how cold it was last year? It was not warm like this at all. It just absolutely blew it. It showed some decent warmth over this. Here's what it's showing for it now. So the fact that it's already showing is showing some normal and just barely above actually is really a cold look for this warm bias model. So again, that's a confirmation to me that we may be on sort of the right path here. Just for fun, one more. Let's look at the UK Met. UK Met does a pretty decent job here as well. Let me just show you in time. So this is going back into August, what it did for November, December, and January. The others will be DJF here. But you notice it started to have some cold signal here for the eastern United States, western warmth. Watch what it did. In September, it sort of erased that warmth and went with a cooler overall look. But its latest run, boom, is just all out cooled here. So this is a pretty doggone cold look for the eastern half of the United States. And so, again, it's the same idea. This is supporting here. Look at the warm looks up in Alaska. Whenever Alaska is warm, folks, we're cold in the eastern United States. That's almost always the way things work. And so what you've got going on in this is you have a western U.S. ridge like this and an eastern trough. That's what's being shown here in the modeling. And the temperatures are certainly then supportive of that. So all in all, when you take a look at things, it looks like we could have a pretty big year on the way here. And so that's sort of the basics of the analysis. If you have specific questions, you can feel free to give a comment there in the YouTube video. If you go to WilhiteWx.com, you'll be able to find a blog post that'll be written up that'll go with this. I haven't written it yet as of recording this video, so can't show it, but I'll have it by the time this video is posted out there, and so that you can go to that as well. Make sure that you follow me on social media as well. If you follow me here on Facebook, facebook.com/WilhiteWx. I go under the term of Southern Indiana weather if you're just typing it here, but I post regular updates there as well. I'm also very active on Twitter. Honestly, I'm probably more active on Twitter than I am on Facebook. Oftentimes, you can follow me at WilhiteWx on Twitter, and I'll have a lot of analysis for us as we go into the winter time there as well. And of course, be sure to follow me, WilhiteWx.com, all winter long for blog posts and sort of breakdowns of things that go on. It's an active winter coming up, folks. This is your winter pattern, I believe, developing. I believe that with all my heart, and I believe it's supported as you look at the recurring Wasbeer wave train, and you see the and you just see the number of signals that are going to come through. There's a very active storm track, and folks, that's why I believe for where I've positioned things based on modeling, based on analogs, based on the organic forecasting methods. This is my honest best guess, and I want you to remember here, as I say this, it's always a guess. No winter forecast is ever going to be perfect, Here it is for what I think. Well above normal storm track right here through the heart of the Ohio Valley into the eastern seaboard here, and very, very cold temperatures here throughout the eastern United States. That's it for the video, folks. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite, WilhiteWx.com. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.